Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program.
I know it in my heart. I know it in my very soul. The state of the nation is sound. Thank you and good afternoon. Marami pong salamat sa inyong lahat.
Setting the tone for economic recovery.
One of the main drivers of our push for growth and employment will be in the agricultural sector.
Addressing a looming food crisis.
Hindi na natin kakayanin ang isa pang lockdown.
A COVID-19 pandemic response roadmap.
I will not preside over any process that will abandon even 1 square inch of territory of the Republic of the Philippines to any foreign power.
And a firm stand on foreign policy. President Bongbong Marcos lays down some of his priorities in his first SONA. How can the new Senate leadership help him realize his legislative priorities? Senate President Migz Zubiri joins us live. The state of the nation is sound. That's how President Bongbong Marcos ended his first SONA on Monday. Among the topics he discussed were economic recovery, tax reform, easing farmers' debts, building more specialty hospitals, as well as issues on education, digitalization, tourism, infrastructure, energy, climate change, and migrant workers. He is also asking Congress to prioritize his 19-point legislative agenda. Will lawmakers be able to pass these laws in record time, and which would they deem most important? Let's go straight to the source of the story. We're going to have to get used to this as well. Senate President Migz Zubiri. Senate President, good morning. Welcome back to the source, and congratulations to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Pinky. It's nice to be on your program, and magandang umaga po sa ating mga kababayan.
So, well, I already said congratulations. I did hear some of the speeches and the votes that were given to you during yesterday's opening of the 19th Congress, the first session of the 19th Congress. Everyone says you solve problems, you're always smiling, you're competent. And everyone also had a common phrase, yung trabahador ng Senado. But we're going to talk about that a little later on. First, let's talk about the President's first State of the Nation address. To you, what were the highlights?
You know, I'm not making sip, Pinky, but to be honest, this is probably one of the best sonas that I've heard in a long, long time, probably in decades. So, I've been to 20 sonas, State of the Nation addresses, and this is one of the best that I've heard. He really laid out the first 10 minutes. It was macroeconomics on how he's going to bring up GDP growth rates, single-digit poverty rates, and how he wants to bring our economy from what the GDP growth rate is now to 6.8 to 8% in 6 years. And of course, when you're listening to all that macroeconomics, many people get zoned out, right? You're trying to figure out how is he going to do it. And in the second part of his speech, he goes into detailing how we will do it through the different sectors, through agriculture, through tourism, poverty eradication programs, build, PPP, ease of doing business on energy projects, renewable energy, climate change, and it goes on. And we're like at awe if you know it doesn't show in the videos, but many times during his speech, me and the speaker Martin Romualdez would look to each other, give each other a thumbs up, and he says, "This is spot on.
Yeah.
What he's discussing is spot on." So what the president just did not give us simply a State of the Nation address. What the president did was deliver a plan for a better nation. And I really appreciated that. And it wasn't focused on just one or two items on drugs or public order, security, and all that. It was focused on several topics that will be, of course, weaved together in helping our country's ship of state moving forward and moving upward. So it was quite an impressive speech. I was very happy with the speech of the president.
I guess there are a number of people who would have seen it the same way you did. It's right. The first 10 minutes was a little, I guess, heavy for some people who aren't big on numbers and the economy because it was macro. And true enough, he went micro. And then in the end, he went to the kind of legislation he needed for Congress to be able to pass into law so that he may achieve the micro going to the macro. So let's talk about some of the issues he raised. Economy. There are a number of issues we need to discuss, but with regards to the economy, he talked about raising revenue by taxing the digital services. Is this something you support?
You know, Karen, sorry, Pinky. I was making a mistake this morning. My mind is still a bit slow. But you know, Pinky, he mentioned a lot of issues on fixing the economy. He mentioned a 19-point agenda for Congress. And this is the first time, Pinky, that I've heard a president lay out 19 pieces of legislation in one speech, at one go.
Hindi ko nga alam kung
Many
ilan
times in many
matatapos
legislation addresses, but patama-tama lang. You know, just talk about the topic and ask for legislation for that.
Yeah.
On e-commerce, I'm very open to it, Pinky, because we have to plug the tax leakages. And due to the pandemic, many went online. And they all decided to just order things online. So there are very good entrepreneurs that are now working online that are sometimes not paying any taxes. This may be unpopular to a certain extent, Pinky, but it's necessary. Countries like Singapore, Malaysia, developed countries in the West have already been able to plug those tax leakages on their own version of e-commerce. So what is important is we'll be able to gain about 20 to 30 billion more in tax revenues. And we need that. You know, coming from the pandemic, the government lost a lot of tax revenues in the tourism industry, micro, small, and medium enterprises. You know, when you go to malls, so many stores have closed down because of the lack of mobility. And they went online. But going online, you lose the revenues for government. So yes, we support
this.
Plugging tax leakages. One of them is coming up with an e-commerce law.
And what about agriculture, which he will be heading, talking about the food supply or possibly even a looming food crisis? He talked about fertilizers. Even before the State of the Nation address, President Bongbong Marcos said he wants to have a government approach, talking to countries such as possibly Indonesia to be able to import fertilizer at a lower cost. And he also, Senate President, talked about subsidy to the farmers. Number 3, farm-to-market roads. If I were to say to you, farm-to-market roads, that's something I've heard from every administration in the past. How can it be different this time around? Bakit ho ba tuwing may administrasyon, may presidente, ang focus kapag sinabi po agriculture, farm-to-market roads, hindi na ho ba ito, is this endless?
Yes, because Karen, Pinky, my Facebook page is flooded by videos of people in different provinces showing me their roads, no? Senator, tulungan niyo naman kami dito sa kalsada dahil parang ilog na po. These are barangay roads leading to the farms. These are not national highways.
Right.
And these barangay roads are what leads to the farms, Pinky. And so what is important is we also fix this infrastructure, key infrastructure for farmers to be able to bring in their goods to and fro the more developed communities and areas and the cities. So yes, farm-to-market roads was only one of the issues that he tackled in agriculture. Pinky also discussed loan moratorium.
Right.
Oh, sorry, loan condonation of arrears and loan moratorium of 1 year. That is very important, Pinky. Why? Because a lot of our farmers, especially agrarian reform beneficiaries, are paying the land back loans and paying the arrears of unpaid loans in the last so many years. So condonation of the loan, or condonation rather of all these penalties will definitely help our farmers move forward because it's a big load off their shoulders. That's number one. He touched on that. He discussed strengthening the value chain. He discussed strengthening coordination among agencies. He discussed coming up with Kadiwa centers to sell the products. He discussed coming up with new blood in the agri sector. You know, I'm an educated agriculturist from UPLB. I graduated agribusiness management, and I also took up my master's in environmental and upland resource management. So he's spot on when he discussed many of the topics. To be able to promote agriculture, Pinky, all over the country is to make sure that it is economically viable for farmers. Kailangan silang kumita. They have to make money. If they don't make money with their produce, Pinky, they're just going to abandon their fields. It doesn't make sense for them to spend, let's say, 100 pesos per kilo for a particular product and sell it for 80 pesos per kilo. They have to make money, and one of the ways of making money is to bring down costs. I remember as a young congressman in the 3rd District of Bukidnon, we had no bridges going to cross Pulangi River to the other side. They say it in Bisaya, Tabok, Pulangi. And the people there would go through a hanging bridge. And the hanging bridge, they would send their corn, rice products through horseback in a hanging bridge. And it was costing like 2 pesos per kilo to transfer the corn from those mountain areas to the towns. So we decided to build bridges. These bridges now are built. Now from 2 pesos per kilo travel cost, it's I think 25 centavos per kilo. So that's a 1 peso 75 centavos saving. That is farm to market road. That is accessibility. And now he wants to bring down the cost of fertilizer. He laid it out, G to G, government to government purchase, Pinky, of fertilizer from Indonesia, from Malaysia, the countries that are producing oil, because fertilizer, especially particularly urea, is a byproduct of oil. So he wants to do government to government transactions because, Pinky, he noticed that although the prices of fertilizer in the world market has gone down, it has not gone down in the Philippines. There are these shenanigan, there are these traders that are practicing overpricing. They're still maintaining the very expensive cost of fertilizer. We have to stop that. He wants to stop that. What he wants to do is now make it government to government, bring down the cost at cost, and just pay for the transport cost as an additional expense.
Okay, just briefly before we go on a break, sir, what about the rice tariffication law? Is this something that needs to be reviewed? I know President Bongbong Marcos did not mention this during yesterday's State of the Nation address, but what are your thoughts on this?
You know, it's been about 2 years since the rice tariffication law has been passed, and the rice is still expensive. Rice is still quite expensive. So we have to review, we have to see if traders are actually taking advantage of it, bringing it in very cheap, of course, without the tax or what you call additional pay up on cost of imported rice. And maybe they're selling it expensive, so they're making a killing. So let us look at studying and possibly amending the rice tariffication law. We're open to that.
Okay. We'll be taking a very short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb. Our source today, Senate President Migz Zubiri. Sir, let's talk about health. Two issues that I believe caused a standing ovation. When the president said, if I'm not mistaken, there will be no lockdowns. And number two, when he said we need to create more hospitals outside NCR. This is really putting focus and giving a lot of priority to hospitals outside NCR. I guess the question here, sir, is you will probably, definitely, not probably, need extra budget to be able to build more hospitals. How can this play out in the 2023 budget? And I say 2023, sir, because if we were to build hospitals, these need to be done as soon as possible.
Actually, Binky, I was one of the happiest people when he mentioned about specialty hospitals because that was my main campaign promise during this last election. And I mentioned that we have to move the heart center, lung center, kidney center, and KTI, and cancer center all across the nation, not only in Metro Manila. And these were programs done by the parents of the president. These were done by his father and mother. And he wants now to expand this Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao so that, like us from Mindanao, we no longer need to travel to Quezon City to go to the kidney center or to the lung center or the heart center. We can focus now on building this all over the Philippines. And I was the one who led the standing ovation. It just can't be seen because it was focused on him. But when he mentioned that, I stood up and I started clapping, and people started standing up and started clapping as well. And I think it really shows that so many of the congressmen who come from different regions were so appreciative of that, that they stood up and gave him a standing ovation, because really, number one cost for us public servants is sending our patients from the provinces to Manila to get treated for their heart, for their lungs, for their kidneys. And these specialty hospitals will really be a boom to the health sector. And we are willing to fund this. As a matter of fact, I filed a measure to institutionalize this. And I hope we can get this as a priority measure and of course, get funding, necessary funding for this, Pinky. This is going to be supported by both houses of Congress 100%.
Well, it's part of your top 10 priority bills. It's number one, Regional Specialty Hospitals Act, which we can talk about a little later on. And then infrastructure projects, he said no suspension of ongoing projects. He's encouraging public-private partnership. But there was something that I noticed. When he mentioned about railways, he talked about Panay, Cebu, and another railway. But there were three supposed to be projects that could have been fulfilled but did not happen due to the ODA with China. What about the Bicol Railway, sir? Hindi ko po narinig yun. Narinig ko Mindanao, Panay, and Cebu.
Yes. He mentioned several already in the pipeline and ongoing. The Bicol Railway is ongoing, Pinky. It's being built as we're speaking, and I believe they're upgrading the lines already. I'm not sure which country provided the ODA, Overseas Development Assistance Funds, for that. But I know that it's ongoing.
Okay.
The beauty of it is well applauded as well, is that he'll continue the projects of the DPWH and the DOTR that are ongoing and are in the pipeline. And he mentioned PPP, and he wants to strengthen the BOT law, streamline it, see where the bottlenecks are, because we have not amended the Build, Operate, and Transfer law for a very long time. And I think that is proper to look into it, review it, and amend it if necessary, to be able to streamline and hasten the development of these PPP products. A lot of PPP programs, rather. A lot of industry players have been complaining that they want to go PPP, but there are so many bottlenecks along the way. So let us review the BOT law, the Build, Operate, and Transfer law, to promote more public and private partnerships for all these major projects, so that the government doesn't have to spend, Pinky, for this, because these are in the trillions of pesos. If you look at all the railway projects, all the mass transport projects, it's in the trillions of pesos, where the private sector can come in and actually be the one to do the spending. And so we have to strengthen the Build, Operate, and Transfer law.
Okay. Again, sir, another short break. We will be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. I'm Pinky Webb. Our source today, Senate President Migz Zubiri. Sir, among the 19 bills or part of the legislative agenda of President Bongbong Marcos, sabi ko nga kanina, inisa-isa yan, number 1. Number 2, natigil siya dun sa number 19. Which are, you think, doable in the short term? Ano ho kaya dito sa 19 na part of his legislative agenda?
Actually, I just want to put on record, Pinky, this is probably one of the most comprehensive requests of a sitting president during a LEDAC, in particular legislative
Executive.
Topics and programs that he wants to push for. This is the first time I've heard itemized 1 to 19 first request all the way to the 19th request, and he outlines why and the reasons why he needs these measures. All of them are quite important. Of course, he discussed right sizing, which is a bit controversial. He discussed the budget modernization bill. He asked about the tax package on real property, coming up with real standards for real property, and database for establishment of a database for real property taxes. He also talked about the passive income package. He mentioned about the e-commerce law, the e-government act, which is important, Pinky, because he wants to plug the tax leakages and corruption, because people are saying, oh, he didn't mention anything about corruption, but he did. In his speech, he mentioned so many times about the ease of doing business and the digital framework that he wants to set the tone for government. When you say digital framework, this e-government act is less face-to-face transaction with government and more online transaction, similar to what they do in New Zealand and New Zealand and Singapore. Of course, he focused also the Virology Institute, the creation of the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, also very important topics due to the pandemic, but also the emergence of monkeypox. So he was talking about research and development, science and technology, creating a CDC, Centers for Disease Control, and coming up with a Virology Institute that can actually come up with vaccines, homegrown, homemade vaccines to fix the problems of in the future when it comes to pandemics and endemic diseases. He discussed Department of Water Resources or Department of Water Management, unified system of retirement pensions for the military. Then he goes on to discuss environmental legislation like the National Land Use Act. Then he goes on to discuss how to develop our national defense by coming up with the National Defense Act. Also discussing an enabling law to allow natural gas development in our country, and so on and so forth. Amendments to the Build, Operate, and Transfer Law. Ang dami niyang
So my
hinihingi sa
question
amin.
actually,
You can't see it. Me and Speaker Martin would look at each other from time to time and say, okay, we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go. As you said, this is the first time you actually heard a president lay out this much bills that he wants passed. Ano po? Sa dami ho ba nito, kaya ba?
Kausap mo, Pinky, yung trabahador ng Senado. Kayang-kaya yan. Kayang-kaya namin yan, Pinky. We can do it. These are very important measures. Of course, like all the Senates before me, we have to go through a fine-tooth comb with all these measures to make sure that it will be good for the people and make it efficient. Of course, the tax measures emanate from the House, so we'll be awaiting the House versions of these tax measures. And then we will look into it and make sure that we'll come up with the best ideas for these laws. And we're all willing to work 24/7. It's a relatively young Senate now, Pinky, very young leadership. You know, Senator Joel Villanueva, my majority floor leader, who's a little bit younger than me, is more energetic than me, as a matter of fact. He's very excited to step up to the plate and start working. So, the president is a very hardworking one. The reason why he got COVID was he did not stop his meetings. He was meeting almost 5 times a day, and that's why he got COVID-19. We have to step up to the plate as well and do the work that needs to be done to achieve the growth rates that he was talking about in the beginning of his speech. We all have to work together. Tama muna pamulitika. Tama na muna yan. We are going to promote bipartisanship in the Senate to make sure that many of these measures will be passed and we'll be working well with the minority.
And do you think there's politics? How does politics, if any, play out in the Senate? You have a supermajority, you have 2 members of the minority, and you have 2 members of an independent group. What is an independent group? And what is the minority?
Well, it doesn't lack in precedence to have an independent member of the Senate. I remember at one point in time, Senator Sergio Osmeña neither voted for the minority or majority. They were independent members of the Senate. In this case, we have 2 independent members of the Senate, Senator Pia Cayetano and Senator Alan Peter. And we have 2 members of the minority, Senator Risa Ontiveros and Senator Coco Pimentel. But I was successful in talking to the Cayetanos my dear friends, and I've known Senator Alan Peter Cayetano since 1998 when we were first-term congressmen. And I said, you can be an independent member or independent block of the Senate, because the beauty of being an independent member of the Senate is if the bills and programs are good for the people, no problem. They will support. And of course, if the measures are, if they see are overbearing or overreaching, then they can step in to assist in the development of a better piece of legislation.
Yeah, but why did they
that's
not
the
join
beauty
the
of that.
majority?
But even in the minority, Pinky, I want to stress, I have worked with Senator Risa Ontiveros very well on many bills. We call these happy bills. I must have passed all her priority measures because we thought at that time, and we believe at that time and during this day, that many of the measures, the Solo Parents Act, protection of women and children, were all good measures for our country. And that's why we practiced bipartisanship in the last Congress, in the 18th Congress, which we will proceed to do in the 19th Congress.
And you said this, you will look for, the exact words escape me, pero maghahanap po kayo ng solutions and you will not find fault. So basically, this was really relating to possible investigations in aid of legislation. Are you saying that you are averse to this?
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying is we will find more solutions than we will find faults. The oversight function of the Senate is a time-honored tradition. We have to make sure our oversight functions are always there to make sure that government is in check on the laws that we've passed, and of course, making sure that these laws are implemented efficiently and effectively. However, my leadership will be one of looking for solutions. We have to look for more solutions. It was Senator Ed Angara, was my mentor in the 14th Congress, who took me under his wing and told me, the fight is not on the floor on how loud you scream or how much media mileage you make. It is behind the scenes, day in and day out, when you toil writing the important pieces of legislation and policy that will become policy of government, that will be your legacy, Migz, he told me. And that will be the legacy for the Filipino people. I maintain that mantra up to this day.
Okay.
And we are going to make sure that we will come out with legislation that will help government in policy making and will help eventually our people from all the ails that are hitting our population.
Sir, I wish you luck. Senate President Migz Zubiri, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Pinky. At mabuhay ang Pilipinas. God bless us all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.